Record right now. Okay, we're recording. You missed the best story ever. Sorry. Just kidding. But you guys, so it's interesting of how I caught myself. Because I don't know if I would have caught myself before we just heard like that video again the other day. You know, it was so fresh in my mind to change my mood like this, and that I had the ability to do that, and it worked. Like here I am smiling, talking to you guys, perfectly fine, doing good, you know. But if that would have been a couple weeks ago, before we started doing Warrior Hour, before I started to like really pour into my personal development right now with you guys and listen to that specific video, I can only imagine how different my morning would have went, or my day would have went, you know. So sometimes, you guys, it's interesting of how we can show up here and it's actually working, you know, like it's actually helping, it's actually making a difference. And especially when you can really admit to yourself you need work, like we were talking about yesterday, letting that ego down, letting that pride down, and saying, I made a mistake, I need work, I rushed that, you know. And so everything like that, you guys, like that we're learning, it's going to be kind of frustrating sometimes trying to apply it. But when you do and you see it work and you see it happen, you're going to be like, oh my God, it's working, you know, or like, oh my God, this is the moment. This is what I'm talking about. Oh, I didn't need that right now.
It's just, no, it's just for you.
Oh, that's for you.
Are you teaching them slow
You're
and steady,
welcome.
steady as fast?
Kind of. Teaching
Slow
them
and
slow
steady
down.
and steady as fast. The turtle always wins the race.
The turtle always wins the race. I'm a rabbit. I'm like, but you know what's funny is it's funny though too, because turtles are slow, like normally in reference, but here for us in the water, turtles are like super fast in the water. So I'm like a turtle on land and water. We'll just like like I don't know, but so I wanted to tell you guys that little story because, you know, I just want to be like honest with you guys. Like, I just want you guys to know I had a really good yesterday. I had a crappy morning. We've turned it around already. The rest of the day is mine to decide how I want to treat it. And I just want you guys to know that like I'm working through this just like you guys are, you know. I'm not perfect. I don't have all the answers. I am working through this just like you guys are. I struggle just like you guys are, you know? And so, like, I know sometimes because it can be really frustrating when you're like seeing somebody like, man, they're looking so good or they're doing so good. Don't believe that shit, okay? Some of us just hide it better, okay? No. But we all struggle. We all have our issues. We all make mistakes. And I think it's better when we just own up to them. Like, the bottom line, like when you just like own up to a mistake, you guys, it actually feels more freeing too. The hard part is trying to hide it, to try to cover it up, to try and pretend it didn't happen. That's freaking hard to me. Like, to be all angry and like scoff around the house and like stuff like that, that to me is hard. But the moment you say, man, I messed up, I'm gonna fix it, I'm sorry, I'm gonna beat myself up for just a minute, I'm sorry, but you know, I made a mistake, but we can fix it. And then we just like move on towards fixing it, rather than sitting and sulking and arguing and being mean or rude or whatever, you know, like that doesn't do anything for us. And I think the moment you start to just admit that part, the easier it gets. The easier it gets for me to admit that I made mistakes. Like something like that. So Mike and I have been together for about 8 years now. So like 4 or 5 years ago, something like that would have happened. Holy shit, World War III would have broke out in my house. Like we would have been like probably instantly screaming at each other before we even knew really what the issue was. Like we probably would have like slammed doors, like, you know what I mean? Like it would have like blown up into like a big fight. I don't know if you guys are like that. Mike and I have always been just like very passionate people. So like sometimes like before we could really like calm down and talk, we would just like explode. You know, I just had no time for like talking. You know, so it's interesting now to even see the two of us just work through something and just fix it and then move on, because that's so not what we would have done just a few years back. And so that also in itself makes me feel really good, because I'm like, wow, we really are growing. Wow, we really are maturing and working through this and becoming like a husband and wife rather than just like partners, you know? Because I think of like business partners as like somebody that you just wouldn't care about or, you know, or something like that. But like, you know, like your life partner, like you want to be able to talk to about stuff, even if it's a mistake or a problem or whatever. And like, but that takes work if that's not your normal. Because like in my normal and my family, like we would just probably like yell. I don't know. And so it was, and same with Mike. Like Mike never really knew how to handle like emotions or issues. He would either just like run from them or ignore them, or we would just argue until one of us just gave up arguing, you know, or just till our faces were blue. And so it's just really cool to see us be like, you know what, we'll figure it out. We'll get it taken care of. Let's not let this ruin our workout. Let's not let this ruin the rest of the day. And I think that's really cool, because that's not something that we would have done just even a few years ago. So the personal development works, you guys. The growth is important, and you have no idea the effects that it could have on your life long term if you just put in the work. Okay? It was hard to admit that I did something wrong this morning, and then I was not going to beat myself up over it any longer. That was hard. Okay? Don't think that I just like was easy, because it was like a lot of pacing, a lot of like back and forth in my head of like, you're fine, no, you're stupid, no, you're fine, oh, you did stupid stuff. And like I was like, stop talking to yourself like that, you know? Like I'm just like arguing with myself in my head, and until I just decided, stop that, done, you're done with that, stop that. And I meant it. Like that's the thing too, is like you could tell yourself like, oh, look at you just talking bad to yourself, but then you continue talking bad to yourself. Like I literally like in my head was like, if you don't stop talking bad to yourself right now, I was like, I don't know what I can do to you, because you know you're in your head, but like I was like, you better stop. Like I like threatened myself, you know, like don't make me count down from 5. Like you know. I see now you got more food. That's great. You go. And shut the door, please. Thank you. Love you. All right, guys. So I wanted to share that story because I also have a video for us today about vulnerability. And I think that it will kind of play into what I was telling about, and also just maybe something that we all need to hear as well. I have played or sent this video before to some of you guys, if you guys have been my coaches before. It's Brene Brown, Vulnerability. Maybe you've heard of it, maybe you haven't. I have actually listened to this video so many times, but I love it every time. And I think I've told you guys this before too, is like sometimes you may have listened to something in the past, but you're in a different mindset or you're in a different situation. And so you could listen to the same video and get a totally different outlook. Or maybe you resonated with the beginning of the video the first time, but then the second time you resonated with the second part of the video. So if you've heard this video before, that's totally fine. You're listening to it again. If you haven't, pay very close attention, because I think it's a very good video. It's Brene Brown. It's a TED Talk. It's about 20 minutes. So get out your pens and pencils. I think you guys will want to take some notes, and then we'll chat about it afterwards. Cool? All right, ladies, let's see what we can get ourselves into.
This is the Averys. This is the Averys trying the hottest new bistro. Wait, and the hottest.
So I'll start with this. A couple of years ago, an event planner called me because I was going to do a speaking event. And she called and she said, I'm really struggling with how to write about you on the little flyer. And I thought, well, what's the struggle? And she said, well, I saw you speak and I'm going to call you a researcher, I think, but I'm afraid if I call you a researcher, no one will come because they'll think you're boring and irrelevant. And I was like, okay. And she said, but the thing I liked about your talk is, you're a storyteller. So I think what I'll do is just call you a storyteller. And of course, the academic insecure part of me was like, you're going to call me a what? And she said, I'm going to call you a storyteller. And I was like, oh, why not Magic Pixie? I was like, let me think about this for a second. And so I tried to call deep on my courage. And I thought, I am a storyteller. I'm a qualitative researcher. I collect stories. That's what I do. And maybe stories are just data with a soul, and maybe I'm just a storyteller. So I said, you know what? Why don't you just say I'm a researcher storyteller? And she went, there's no such thing. So I'm a researcher storyteller. And I'm going to talk to you today. We're talking about expanding perception. And so I want to talk to you and tell some stories about a piece of my research that fundamentally expanded my perception and really actually changed the way that I live and love and work and parent. And this is where my story starts. When I was a young researcher, doctoral student, my first year I had a research professor who said to us, here's the thing, if you cannot measure it, it does not exist. And I thought he was just sweet talking me. I was like, really? And he's like, absolutely. So you have to understand that I have a bachelor's in social work, a master's in social work, and I was getting my PhD in social work. So my entire academic career was surrounded by people who kind of believed in the life's messy, love it, and I'm more the life's messy, clean it up, organize it, and put it into a bento box. And so to think that I had found my way, to found a career that takes me, really one of the big sayings in social work is lean into the discomfort of the work. And I'm like, knock discomfort upside the head and move it over and get all A's. That was my mantra. So I was very excited about this. And so I thought, you know what? This is the career for me because I am interested in some messy topics, but I want to be able to make them not messy. I want to understand them. I want to hack into these things that I know are important and lay the code out for everyone to see. So where I started was with connection, because by the time you're a social worker for 10 years, what you realize is that connection is why we're here. It's what gives purpose and meaning to our lives. This is what it's all about. It doesn't matter whether you talk to people who work in social justice and mental health and abuse and neglect. What we know is that connection, the ability to feel connected, is neurobiologically, that's how we're wired. It's why we're here. So I thought, you know what? I'm going to start with connection. Well, that situation where you get an evaluation from your boss and she tells you 37 things that you do really awesome and one thing that you can't, an opportunity for growth. And all you can think about is that opportunity for growth, right? Well, apparently this is the way my work went as well, because when you ask people about love, they tell you about heartbreak. When you ask people about belonging, they'll tell you their most excruciating experiences of being excluded. And when you ask people about connection, the stories they told me were about disconnection. So very quickly, really about 6 weeks into this research, I ran into this unnamed thing that absolutely unraveled connection in a way that I didn't understand or had never seen. And so I pulled back out of the research and thought, I need to figure out what this is. And it turned out to be shame. And shame is really easily understood as the fear of disconnection. Is there something about me that if other people know it or see it, that I won't be worthy of connection? The things I can tell you about it, it's universal. We all have it. The only people who don't experience shame have no capacity for human empathy or connection. No one wants to talk about it, and the less you talk about it, the more you have it. What underpinned this shame, this I'm not good enough, which we all know that feeling. I'm not blank enough. I'm not thin enough, rich enough, beautiful enough, smart enough, promoted enough. The thing that underpinned this was excruciating vulnerability. This idea of, in order for connection to happen, we have to allow ourselves to be seen, really seen. And you know how I feel about vulnerability. I hate vulnerability. And so I thought, this is my chance to beat it back with my measuring stick. I'm going in, I'm going to figure this stuff out. I'm going to spend a year. I'm going to totally deconstruct shame. I'm going to understand how vulnerability works, and I'm going to outsmart it. So I was ready, and I was really excited. As you know, it's not going to turn out well. You know this. So I could tell you a lot about shame, but I'd have to borrow everyone else's time. But here's what I can tell you that it boils down to. And this may be one of the most important things that I've ever learned in the decade of doing this research. My 1 year has turned into 6 years, thousands of stories, hundreds of long interviews, focus groups. At one point, people were sending me journal pages and sending me their stories, thousands of pieces of data, in 6 years. And I kind of got a handle on it. I kind of understood this is what shame is, this is how it works. I wrote a book, I published a theory, but something was not okay. And what it was is that if I roughly took the people I interviewed and divided them into people who really have a sense of worthiness, that's what this comes down to, a sense of worthiness. They have a strong sense of love and belonging. And folks who struggle for it, and folks who are always wondering if they're good enough. There was only one variable that separated the people who have a strong sense of love and belonging and the people who really struggle for it, and that was the people who have a strong sense of love and belonging believe they're worthy of love and belonging. That's it. They believe they're worthy. And to me, the hard part of the one thing that keeps us out of connection is our fear that we're not worthy of connection, was something that personally and professionally I felt like I needed to understand better. So what I did is I took all of the interviews where I saw worthiness, where I saw people living that way, and just looked at those. What do these people have in common? And I have a slight office supply addiction, but it's another talk. So I had a manila notebook, a manila folder, and I had a Sharpie. And I was like, what am I going to call this research? And the first words that came to my mind were wholehearted. These are kind of wholehearted people living from this deep sense of worthiness. So I wrote at the top of the manila folder. And I started looking at the data. In fact, I did it first in this in a 4-day, very intensive data analysis where I went back, pulled these interviews, pulled the stories, pulled the incidents. What's the theme? What's the pattern? My husband left town with the kids because I always go into this kind of Jackson Pollock crazy thing where I'm just like writing and going and kind of just in my researcher mode. And so here's what I found. What they had in common was a sense of courage. And I want to separate courage and bravery for you for a minute. Courage, the original definition of courage, when it first came into the English language, it's from the Latin word cur, meaning heart. And the original definition was to tell the story of who you are with your whole heart. And so these folks had, very simply, the courage to be imperfect. They had the compassion to be kind to themselves first and then to others, because as it turns out, we can't practice compassion with other people if we can't treat ourselves kindly. And the last was they had connection, and this was the hard part, as a result of authenticity. They were willing to let go of who they thought they should be in order to be who they were, which is, you have to absolutely do that for connection. The other thing that they had in common was this. They fully embraced vulnerability. They believed that what made them vulnerable made them beautiful. They didn't talk about vulnerability being comfortable nor did they really talk about it being excruciating, as I had heard it earlier in the shame interviewing. They just talked about it being necessary. They talked about the willingness to say, I love you first. The willingness to do something where there are no guarantees. The willingness to breathe through waiting for the doctor to call after your mammogram. The willing to invest in a relationship that may or may not work out. They thought this was fundamental. I personally thought it was betrayal. I could not believe I had pledged allegiance to research, where our job, you know, the definition of research is to control and predict, to study phenomenon for the reason, for the explicit reason to control and predict. And now my very, my mission to control and predict had turned up the answer that the way to live is with vulnerability and to stop controlling and predicting. This led to a little breakdown, which actually looked more like this. And it did. It led to I call it a breakdown. My therapist calls it a spiritual awakening. Spiritual awakening sounds better than breakdown, but I assure you it was a breakdown. And I had to put my data away and go find a therapist. Let me tell you something. You know who you are when you call your friends and say, I think I need to see somebody. Do you have any recommendations? Because about 5 of my friends are like, woo, I wouldn't want to be your therapist. And I was like, what does that mean? And they're like, I'm just saying, like, don't bring your measuring stick. I was like, okay. So I found a therapist. My first meeting with her, Diana, I brought in my list of the way the wholehearted live. And I sat down and she said, how are you? And I said, I'm great. I'm okay. And she said, what's going on? And I said, and this is a therapist who sees therapists, because we have to go to those because their BS meters are good. And so I said, here's the thing, I'm struggling. And she said, what's the struggle? And I said, well, I have a vulnerability issue. And, and I know that vulnerability is kind of the core of shame and fear and our struggle for worthiness, but it appears that it's also the birthplace of joy, of creativity, of belonging, of love. And I think I have a problem, and I need some help. And I said, but here's the thing, no family stuff, no childhood shit. I just need some strategies. Thank you. So she goes like this. And then I said, it's bad, right? And she said, it's neither good nor bad. It just is what it is. And I said, oh my God, this is gonna suck. And it did, and it didn't. And it took about a year. And you know how there are people that, like, when they realize that vulnerability and tenderness are important, that they kind of surrender and walk into it? A, that's not me. And B, I don't even hang out with people like that. For me, it was a year-long street fight. It was a slugfest. Vulnerability pushed, I pushed back. I lost the fight, but probably won my life back. And so then I went back into the research and spent the next couple of years really trying to understand what the wholehearted, what the choices they were making, and what are we doing with vulnerability? Why do we struggle with it so much? Am I alone in struggling with vulnerability? No. So this is what I learned. We numb vulnerability. When we're waiting for the call, it was funny, I sent something out on Twitter and on Facebook that says, how would you define vulnerability? What makes you feel vulnerable? And within an hour and a half, I had 150 responses. Because I wanted to know, what's out there. Having to ask my husband for help because I'm sick and we're newly married. Initiating sex with my husband, initiating sex with my wife. being turned down, asking someone out, waiting for the doctor to call back, getting laid off, laying off people. This is the world we live in. We live in a vulnerable world. And one of the ways we deal with it is we numb vulnerability. And I think there's evidence, and it's not the only reason this evidence exists, but I think that it's a huge cause. We are the most in debt, obese, addicted, and medicated adult cohort in US history. The problem is, and I learned this from the research, that you cannot selectively numb emotion. You can't say, here's the bad stuff. Here's vulnerability, here's grief, here's shame, here's fear, here's disappointment. I don't want to feel these. I'm going to have a couple of beers and a banana nut muffin. I don't want to feel these. And I know that's knowing laughter. I hack into your lives for a living. I know that's, oh God. You can't numb those hard feelings without numbing the other affects or emotions. You cannot selectively numb. So when we numb those, we numb joy. We numb gratitude. We numb happiness. And then we are miserable and we are looking for purpose and meaning. And then we feel vulnerable. So then we have a couple of beers and a banana nut muffin. And it becomes this dangerous cycle. One of the things that I think that we need to think about is why and how we numb. And it doesn't just have to be addiction. The other thing we do is we make everything that's uncertain certain. Religion has gone from a belief in faith and mystery to certainty. I'm right, you're wrong, shut up. That's it. Just certain. The more afraid we are, the more vulnerable we are, the more afraid we are. This is what politics looks like today. There's no discourse anymore. There's no conversation. There's just blame. You know what blame? You know how blame is described in the research? A way to discharge pain and discomfort. We perfect. If there's anyone who wants their life to look like this, it would be me. But it doesn't work because what we do is we take fat from our butts and put it in our cheeks. Which just, I hope in 100 years people will look back and go, no. And we perfect, most dangerously, our children. Let me tell you what we think about children. They're hardwired for struggle when they get here. When you hold those perfect little babies in your hand, our job is not to say, look at her, she's perfect. My job is just to keep her perfect, make sure she makes the tennis team by 5th grade and Yale by 7th grade. That's not our job. Our job is to look and say, you know what? You're imperfect and you're wired for struggle, but you are worthy of love and belonging. That's our job. Show me a generation of kids raised like that and we'll end the problems I think that we see today. We pretend that what we do doesn't have an effect on people. We do that in our personal lives. We do that corporate, whether it's a bailout, an oil spill, a recall. We pretend like what we're doing doesn't have a huge impact on other people. I would say to companies, this is not our first rodeo, people. We just need you to be authentic and real and say, we're sorry, we'll fix it. But there's another way, and I'll leave you with this. This is what I have found, to let ourselves be seen, deeply seen, vulnerably seen. To love with our whole hearts, even though there's no guarantee. And that's really hard. And I can tell you as a parent, that's excruciatingly difficult. To practice gratitude and joy in those moments of kind of terror when we're wondering, can I love you this much? Can I believe in this passionately? Can I be this fierce about this? Just to be able to stop and instead of catastrophizing what might happen to say, I'm just so grateful. Because to feel this vulnerable means I'm alive. And the last, which I think is probably the most important, is to believe that we're enough. Because when we work from a place, I believe, that says, I'm enough, then we stop screaming and start listening. We're kinder and gentler to the people around us, and we're kinder and gentler to ourselves. That's all I have.
Yay. Okay, I'm telling you guys, I've heard that video a million freaking times, but still today listening to it hit me totally different than any other time. So if you guys have ever heard that before, just know that it's okay to like repeat personal development. Okay, it's actually really important, I think, to go back and continue to listen to the same development to see, have I grown since then? Am I listening to this in a different way? Is it affecting me a little different? Do I feel like, wow, yeah, I actually am applying that since I listened to it? Or are you saying, oh, wow, I totally forgot they said that in this video? You know, I know when I first, so my first personal development like book or project was called The Compound Effect by Darren Hardy. And he talks about how every single little day, every habit that you do will equal, you know, like to get to a goal, you can set that goal, but without doing everything every single day, you're never going to get that goal. And so it kind of teaches you how to do something every single day. But I bought the audio book on CD. And I used to work, this is when we lived in Houston, I used to work in Sugar Land, and then I used to live in Galveston. It was like an hour and 20-minute drive there and back to work. And I would just listen to it in my CD. So it was like a 6 CD like set, and I would just literally rotate the CDs. And I would work 4 days a week there and back. So like each CD would take me like there, and then I would switch the CD on the way back. So each CD was about an hour and 20 minutes, or had about an hour of content on it. And so I would just switch it out. And you guys, I did that for like an entire year. Only listened to Darren Hardy's Compound Effect. And it is literally so ingrained in my brain at this point. Like I apply it without even knowing it, you know, because I have listened to it and I have heard it so many times. It's like his voice is secretly in my head sometimes. It's been a while since I've listened to it. I'm probably due to actually go back and listen to it again and really kind of recheck the information. So even if you've listened to this, even if you've like read Brene Brown, The Power of Vulnerability, or you've watched this video before, I have seen it so many times and I still love it every single time I listen to it. So remember that too. So you guys can always go back. Like if you ever want to hear some of the videos that I've played here, but maybe you were distracted or working out, and so you're like, can I have that again? I'm fine to send it to you, or at least show you where to get it, so that way you could listen to it again on your own if you ever want to, okay? But let's talk about the power of vulnerability, because you guys, it's the secret sauce. Vulnerability. Like allowing ourselves to be vulnerable is the single most hardest thing and most important thing. It like, I love the way she talks about numbing, because I think that really, really probably resonates with a lot of us right now, because we really want to run and numb from the current situation, right? We want to pretend it's not happening. We want to escape from it. Or we're stuck in our freaking houses and there's nothing else to do. And so we numb, so we escape, and so we feel a little better. But you guys, I love the fact that she reminds us that you cannot selectively numb. So yeah, you may be numbing for a second from the shame or the guilt or the vulnerability or the hurt or the struggle or the chaos, but you're also numbing from joy, happiness, excitement, you know? And so you cannot selectively numb. When you choose to numb, you numb across the plane, all the way across the board. And so I almost, when we choose to numb, instead of saying, man, I just feel like shit, I just want to like have a couple drinks, ask yourself, do you also want to escape from the possible joy coming your way? Remind yourself, okay, I'm numbing to get out of, you know, I'm numbing to get out of this pain, but I'm also numbing the possibility of joy. Am I willing to accept that? Am I okay with numbing my joy right now too? And I think that may just be enough to trigger to say, no, I don't. I don't want to numb from this. I don't want to run from this. What if I actually just felt it? What if I was actually just going to be vulnerable enough to feel it? Like, we're so afraid of feeling things, especially any kind of pain. But you guys, experiencing pain allows you to understand the importance of joy. You can't understand and know how amazing it is to be on top if you've never been at the bottom. Okay? So when we numb from pain and shame and hurt, you are literally stopping yourself from experiencing the immense amount of joy in your life. You know? And then what do? We compensate too. So we numb over here to a point where we can't experience it, and then we try to compensate for it, and we try to create joy in other ways, you know, because we're not experiencing it, but because we're numbing the pain. And then we try to create this joy in our life. Like, why are we getting all this joy? When we buy things and we get superficial, you know, we become surface people because we're looking for instant gratification. But you don't need instant gratification if you weren't numbing all this pain. If you actually dealt with the pain, the joy will come naturally. You won't have to buy anything to experience it. It will come from the inside. Okay? So I love that part of it. And I really, because I know right now is really hard. But what if you just felt it? What if you just dealt with it anyway? Instead of running from it, instead of hiding it, instead of pretending it's not there. What if you just faced it on? Yes, Tennille, everybody read that. You guys, alcohol sales went up. I think in Florida, they were 55%. In Florida, they went up 55% alcohol sales. Whoa, scary. Suicide rates are on the rise. Scary. Right? I don't want that to be any of you guys. You know? Yeah, exactly. At least they're not out getting DUIs, right? I guess I would hope so, maybe. You know? Yeah, you guys, it's very scary time to think about. And we have to put in the work to keep ourselves out of being a statistic. You know? I don't want to be a statistic. That's like one of the main reasons what keeps me at home and why I don't want to be out even going to the grocery store. I don't want to be a statistic. I don't want to have to sit in line at a COVID-19 freaking pop-up tent. Like, no, thank you. I don't want to. Now, if for some reason we happen to contract it in some way and I had to go through it, obviously I would. But I'm going to do everything I can to make sure that me and my family are safe from it, you know, and from everything. You guys, I want to be safe from the numbing. I want to be safe from the chaos. And the only way I can do that is by feeling it, going through it, dealing with it, not hiding from it, not pretending it's not happening, you know? So lean into that discomfort. That's kind of like one of the first things that she said that I really liked. Lean into that discomfort. Stop trying to run from it. And that's how I felt like, that's why I want to tell you guys that the story this morning. Because one, I want to be vulnerable with you guys. I want you guys to know when I'm struggling. And I also want you guys to know that I pulled myself out of it because of you guys. Because I knew at 8 o'clock I needed to talk to you guys. And I couldn't come here with a chip on my shoulder. So I bucked up, did the work I needed to do, and got rid of it. Scoot, new me. And it's crazy because me, you know, 5 years ago, I would have been like, there's no way I can just get over it. It's just how my brain is. I can't just get over it. You know what I mean? Like, you guys know what I'm talking about. When you're like, I'm just angry. I don't know how you just want me to get over it. The thing is, it's your pride. Your pride can't get over it. You are totally capable of doing that. You know? You're capable. You're not allowing it. because of all the years that you said this is just the way I'm wired. Well, it's not anymore. That ends today. You are no longer wired like that. Write that down. I'm no longer wired like that crap I used to be wired like, or whatever. Write down something about it. I'm no longer like that. I no longer allow my anger to ruin my day. I no longer allow mistakes to ruin my mood. Fix it and move on. Admit you messed up and move on. You're allowing it to ruin the day. You're allowing it to create an argument. Okay? And so I love that. So like the one thing too that like I don't really think has to do with like my story, but I think it's a very important thing that she says. But you guys, believing that we deserve love and belonging. Like I believed, okay, I guess I could so resonate with my story. I believed that I deserved to have a good day, regardless of how I started it. Regardless of what happened this morning, I believe I deserve to have a good day today. Now, what do I need to do to make that happen? Not just what does Mike need to do, not just what does Derek need to do, what does Jenny need to do to get her butt back in action? I pressed play. I did. I might have half-assed first half of that workout, but I pulled myself through and I said, Jenny, get through this workout. And as soon as that workout was done, you guys, I felt so much better. And it was worth it. It was, but like how, okay, so what if I would have quit that workout? You know how much more shame would have been placed in my mind? Do you know how much more guilt, how many more nasty things I would have said to myself? Because not only did you mess up at 5:30 a.m., but now you quit your workout, the reason you were up, and now da-da-da-da-da, you know what I mean? And then you kind of just spiral and talk crap to yourself the whole time. I don't want to do that anymore. I just don't want to do it anymore. I'm so tired of being mean to myself. I'm so tired of holding on to things that are not serving me. You know? And I want the same thing for you guys. And if I want that for you, I have to be willing to do it for myself first. If I want to come here and teach you guys how to get over it, I have to be willing to get over it myself. You know? And so like that's even sometimes, you know, in relationships, like we always want like, you know, the other person to change. The other person isn't going to change until you change. The actions start with you. You can only control you. So if you want them to change, what can you do differently right now to help that move along? You know? It starts with you, no matter what. Even if you think the issue is them, it's not them, it's you. Or what can you do to help the issue move along? What can you change that you're doing right now? Okay? Just, you guys, have the courage to be imperfect, please. That's what it's all about. Like, I just had the courage this morning to just be like, I messed up. Whoops. You know? Whoops. We'll fix it. Look, it's already fixed. Boom. Move on. 9 a.m. We got the rest of the freaking day to worry about whatever it is that was supposed to be worried about today rather than the crap that happened this morning. You know? Have the courage to admit you messed up. Have the courage to be imperfect and to tell people about it. Ooh, scary. Somebody might think that you're not perfect. Ah! It's okay. Okay? Like, if I was scared about what you guys thought about me right now, you know, like, I wouldn't be here inspiring you guys. I would be here pretending that nothing happened. And then, like, you know what I mean? Like, I could have came to this meeting easily and pretended everything was fine and nothing ever happened. And I could have played a little video for you guys and been like, look, guys, I'm still perfect over here. But what is that going to teach you guys? how am I really going to feel getting off the call going, if they only really knew what happened? You know, it could be easy to do that part, but I wouldn't feel good about it on the inside. But you know what? I feel really good right now telling you guys what I did wrong and how I fixed it and how I'm working through it and how we can continue to feel better about it. That to me is so much more important than being perfect or looking like I don't make mistakes, you know? And that's like, I kind of keep referencing that Rachel Hollis video we watched the other day of where she was talking about that woman that was on the TV and how the lady on the TV was like, how do you do it all? And she's like, oh, if you just work hard, you know? And it was like, wait a minute, no, like, you're gonna tell me all of this if I just worked harder, I would have all of that? Like, that's a lie. That's a lie. She has a lot of help. She has people that come from all over. She has an entourage of people that help her achieve what she has. I don't want to lie to you guys. I don't want to like tell you guys. I don't know who she was talking about. I don't actually. I don't remember who she was like talking about that was on the website. I'm sure we could probably find it somewhere, figure it out who she was talking to or talking about. I'm not sure. But you guys, that she was pissed because that lady was lying. Now I can't guarantee that you guys would know that I was lying if I told you I came here and had a great morning, but you can definitely tell I'm telling the truth right now, you know? Trust me, I didn't make that story up from this morning. That was something that legit happened. And I think that you guys would learn a lot more from a real freaking story that just happened than me trying to tell you, just work harder. You know, like, I just don't think that's gonna help you guys. What's gonna help you guys is saying, hey, I messed up and I'm working through it, and this is what I'm doing to try and work through it. You know, I think that to me is gonna help you guys so much more than trying to tell you guys to be perfect or work harder or do better. You know, that's just not realistic, and that's not what I'm all about. So did anybody else write anything down or have anything else about that they kind of like maybe pulled it into like their day or their story or anything like that? Thank you. Cheers.
So for me, it talking about with like children, especially like me trying to redirect my energy with Annie and making sure that I'm not like freaking out on her all the time and remembering that she's imperfect and that she's allowed to be imperfect, and I need to be more accepting of the fact that she's a kid being a kid and not let it frustrate me. So it's tying into my day and then not being angry at myself all day long because of a way I handled the situation with her. So for me, that was really important together.
Oh my God, yes. I beat myself up so much for not being like a good mom or like my idea of a good mom, you know? Like, I beat myself so, especially if like, I'm just like, oh my God, Derek, like, I feel like I've yelled at you every single day. Like, you know, and then I start beating myself up because I'm like, wait, is that me? Is that you know what I mean? I'm like, oh my God, why am I yelling at him again? Like, or, you know, whatever. Why am I getting frustrated with that? He's just being a kid. Like, and a lot of times it's because I'm distracted. A lot of times it's because I'm working and he's being a kid and I'm like, I'm trying to work, you know? But he's like, you're just holding your phone. And I'm like, this is my work. This is the work. Like, you know? And like, he doesn't get it, which is understandable. Why would he get that? You know, why would he understand that yet? And so I also just try to like stop and explain more, even if he's not necessarily getting it. I figure the more and more I continue to explain it, eventually there will be a time he gets it. And actually, he's already shown like signs of it where, so he was using my phone yesterday for something and I was like, hey, bub, can I have my phone back? And he goes in and he clicks on Facebook. He goes, here, you can get back to work. I was like, oh my God. I was like, thanks, bub. So then but it was one of those little moments where I'm like, oh, he does kind of pay attention. Oh, he does kind of notice those little things, you know? And so I think sometimes we don't give them credit enough for understanding, or we think, oh, he wouldn't understand it, so I'm not even going to try and explain it, you know? But I agree. I think I love the little part right at the end where she was like, our thought is like, oh my God, you're so perfect. I want to keep you perfect. Don't ever get a bruise. Don't ever mess up. You're so perfect. And then what happens when that child gets older and they realize they're not perfect? Then all of a sudden, all their life, they've been living a lie, you know? I almost wonder, I don't know if my mom's on the call. Mom, did you tell me I was perfect all the time? Because that was really hard to accept when I realized I wasn't perfect. So I'm gonna have to talk to my mom and be like, were you telling me that shit when I was younger? But you guys, they are imperfect. And I think it's almost better for them to know that. It's better for them to understand you're imperfect the way that you are. And it's beautiful. And we're going to work through those imperfections. And I want you to embrace those imperfections. And instead of hiding them and shaming them and feeling guilty about them, let's just embrace them and see how we can work through them. Or see how we can make it your strength. You know, how can we work on it to where it's your strength now? You know, it's just like somebody who like maybe has fear of talking to people, but then you put them in front of people and you make them talk and you make them talk and you make them talk and you make them talk, and eventually they're not so scared about talking in front of people anymore. Eventually they kind of like it, you know. It's just like working out. You guys know that first freaking workout you guys tried to do when you were like getting back in shape or something, or maybe you're doing that right now and you're like, oh my God, these workouts suck. I'm dying. I'm sweating. I can't do half of what they're doing. I can't keep up with them. Who is Shanti? Is he even like a bunny? Like, what is this? Like, you know what I mean? Like all these thoughts that start going through your head of like, what is this? I can't do this. Da 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 da. But then there's like that moment where like, you know, you're like maybe a week or two in and you're kind of like craving that workout, or you feel a little lost on your rest day, or you know what I mean? Like you start to kind of crave it. And it's the same thing with anything else, you guys. I feel like the more that we let down our vulnerability, the more we just admit that we're imperfect and we make mistakes, it's almost like the more the mistakes don't bother me. I'm just like, whoops, made a mistake, move on. You know, I don't beat myself up as much. I don't talk down to myself as much, you know, because like I said, like that issue that happened this morning would have easily ruined the whole day for us. Easily. And I'm not happy to admit that, you know. It's not like I'm bragging. I ain't bragging, okay? It's just to let you guys know that maybe if that happens to you too, you're capable of changing that. You're capable of doing different. You're just going to have to be willing to do a lot of work. Okay? But the work is worth it. Okay? The work is so worth it. Because here I am pouring into you guys, and I'm about to have a great day. And that's what I've chosen. You know, that's what I had to snap myself out of and choose, rather than allowing what I always do to take over. Like almost like instead of allowing autopilot or cruise control take over, I want you to put your foot on the gas pedal and work your way through it. Okay? So don't let autopilot go. Don't let something that you would always react this way consume you again, because that's no longer you. You're different now. You know better. You're smarter, you're faster, you've done the work, you're capable of catching yourself. Okay? And then the more you catch yourself, then eventually you'll be able to stop it before it even happens. you know, because it's like I'm getting better at recognizing it. The more and more I catch myself, the more and more I stop myself, I'm getting better at recognizing what it is that I do when I self-sabotage, when I make a mistake, because I'm afraid to admit that I made a mistake, you know? And so don't be afraid to make mistakes. Yes, Nisha. Sorry, my dog just like whined like crazy. I don't know if you guys heard her through the thing, but she's like whining over here. She's like she has to have like attention at all times. By the way, Mike just brought me an immunity shot. Have you guys ever taken these? I know a couple of you guys do my recipe, but so I make these all the time. It's pineapple juice, apple cider vinegar, honey, turmeric, ginger, coconut water, cayenne pepper, pre-workout, and a couple other things I think that I put in here too, just depending on what I have. But they're just little immunity boosters. They're kind of like spicy, but we just take them every morning, so they're like really good for your health. Ginger, turmeric, all that stuff is really good for you. So if you guys want the recipe, let me know. I'll hook you up with it. It's really good. Very good. Okay, what time we got here? 9:08. Right on time. All right, ladies. So I do want to let you guys know I have a couple of things planned for this week-ish. So Friday, I have a meditation video I would like to do with you guys. So I would love for you guys to come on Friday for meditation. Sorry. Friday is gonna be a meditation video. So maybe just like pick an area too, like that you're gonna listen where you can maybe have peace or quiet, or you know what I mean, like just if you can't, that's totally fine, but I just want to give you guys like a heads up. So Friday we're going to do a little meditation video, and then Saturday Elika is actually going to do yoga again for us. So bring your yoga mats on Saturday. We will kind of get a little movement and some breath, and we'll kind of do it the same way we did last time. I'll pull I am cards so you guys all have like a positivity word in your head, and then she's going to kind of reference that through the yoga. I really loved that. We did it not this past Saturday, but the Saturday before. And so I asked her to do that again. So I have plans for that on Friday and Saturday. If you guys ever have videos or anything, personal development, or people that you know of that you're like, man, this is such a good video, or this is such a good person to listen to, send them my way, because I'm happy to kind of start sharing content as well. And I know that as we're all growing, you guys, there's so much possibility for other leaders here too. Like, what if you did your own warrior hour? What if, you know, what if you've grown so much mentally here and you've become so strong and you've reached out enough to those girls down there that you could host your own, you know, maybe once a week, maybe once a month, you know? But I think about it as like, and that's what I'm gonna always remind you guys, reach down and help that next girl. Okay, so make sure you're looking out for people. Make sure you're, if you're scrolling or something like that and you see somebody struggling, make sure you reach out to them. I also, like Kristen had told me, she's like, I reached out to a couple of my people that maybe struggle with addiction, past addiction, and just said, hey, you doing all right? You doing okay? You good? Checking on your family, checking on, friends, coworkers, all that stuff, okay? Make sure everybody's doing all right. As you're growing here, it's time to spread that love, spread that hope and faith, okay? So we need to make sure that we're reaching down and pulling that next person up with us, okay? I think that's all I had today. How does that sound? Sound good? All right, let's go have good days today, no matter what happens. New mood, same you, new mood. Scratch it, say you're sorry, move on, fix the day, and continue having a great day, okay? All right, ladies. I hope you have a great day. I will see you guys tomorrow, okay? Bye.